welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to look once more at an old favourite, Mr. Nathan Oakley. Yes, he who can't convert metres into kilometres. A whole bunch of people who probably can do very basic mathematics are my wonderful patrons. With massive thanks to all my patrons, including new patrons Lucas Hoy, David Fisher, Jeff Plessier, Crispy Bacon, D Pep, Andy Sibley, Global Mom and Cy Allen, and my latest patron, Suferic. Thank you all so very much. At the start of all of Nathan's live streams, he runs through a set of housekeeping questions. Nathan considers that these questions are real gotcha questions for globe earthers, and he's just released a short video that pretty much summarise his housekeeping questions. We're going to have a look at them, bust each one, and then give some housekeeping questions for flat earthers. Roll VT. Nathan, you doubting little chuff nugget. First of all, we can accurately measure the distance to Venus using radar. We know the speed of light, so the time it takes for the signal to reflect gives us the distance. If we closely monitor the position of Venus over days and weeks, we can see how it is apparently closer or further away from the Sun. All we do is we wait until it's at its maximum distance from the Sun, and that means the two lines, centre of Earth to centre of Venus, and centre of Venus to the centre of the Sun, are at an angle of 90 degrees. That gives us a right angled triangle. We know the distance from Earth to Venus. Simple trigonometry gives us the distance from Earth to the Sun. Next question. Oh wow, another toughie. Try looking at the stars. They apparently rotate around Polaris. Now, if those stars are on a flat plane above or on a dome or something above, you would have one single point of rotation around Polaris. However, as you go further south, instead of the circles of the stars around Polaris getting larger and larger and larger forever, once you get past the equator, they start to get smaller until you're shown a secondary point in the other direction that they're rotating around, somewhere near Sigma Octantis in the southern hemisphere. You can't have 2 points of rotation on a single disk. Next question. Well, you little flat-headed, fundy pancake zealot, you do not need to dig a hole to the centre of the Earth to know what it's made of. Using P waves and S waves generated from earthquakes, you can take all sorts of measurements. You can time how long it takes the P and S waves to travel through the Earth. There is even a shadow zone on the far side of the Earth from where your earthquake is that S waves don't reach. With multiple events over time, you can build up a picture, a pattern of how these waves appear, which enables you to determine the different layers inside the Earth, including the fact that it's got a molten iron core. Next question. Well, first of all, I propose a quick experiment to prove that there is something there. Nathan, take your shoes and socks off, stick your foot out in front of you, hold a lump hammer as high as you can above your foot, let go and see what happens. Firstly, I predict that the hammer will go straight down. Secondly, I predict you'll say ow. And thirdly, I predict you'll probably have some broken toes. So we know that something's happening to make the hammer go down. Sir Isaac Newton did some work on this apparently and came up with Newtonian gravitational theory. And we see that all objects obey the laws. A bunch of astronomers noted that the planet Uranus apparently didn't follow those laws exactly. There were some irregularities. With some maths, they noted that if you had an additional planet, that would resolve the problems. They calculated where that planet would be. Astronomers went and looked and found it and discovered Neptune. So Newtonian gravitational theory made a prediction, And that prediction was correct. Next question. Gas has mass and so is subject to gravity and is drawn to the Earth. There's an awful lot of atmosphere, it's quite thick. And just like the thickness of the sea, the deeper you go, the higher the pressure, because of the weight of the water above it. This also explains our atmospheric pressure gradient. At sea level, we're at 14.7 pounds per square inch of atmospheric pressure. You go up a mountain, that level drops. You go up higher still in a plane, it drops further. The higher you go, the lower that atmospheric pressure is until you reach space. At that point, our atmospheric pressure has lowered until it's the same as space, approximately 10 to the negative 17 torr. No container is required. You cannot deny the atmospheric pressure gradient. You can measure it yourself. Next question from the purple toy master, please. Well, probably the most direct evidence of Earth curvature are images like this. The hull of the boat is totally hidden behind a curve, and before you cry perspective, you can still clearly make out the mast and even some of the rigging, both of which have a much smaller angular size than the hull. Both the mast and the rigging are also subject to perspective. Due to their smaller angular size, they should disappear before the hull. But they don't, because it is not the distance and perspective that is hiding the hull, but the fact that it is around the curve. Additionally, if the Earth is a globe, then the higher up you go, the further the horizon should apparently drop. And that is exactly what we find. In this image you can clearly see the horizon is below eye level. That should not happen if the Earth was flat. Next question, Mute Swan Oakley. That is a dumb question. R is just a mathematical value. As we know the circumference of the Earth, all we need to do is run a simple equation. R equals the circumference divided by pi times 2. That gives you R. Well, Oakley, I've answered every single one of your housekeeping questions. I'm now going to give you a set of housekeeping questions for flat earthers. These are questions that we have never seen properly answered. Question 1. The same question you put to us. Any evidence for the distance to the sun? Because it would appear that flat earthers haven't got the faintest idea. We've heard 3,000 miles away, we've heard somewhere in the clouds, and all sorts of tripe. It might be nice if you guys could actually agree on a distance and show some evidence for it. Question 2. You asked us any evidence for axial rotation, and I showed the evidence of 2 points of stellar rotation. So my question 2 to you is, what is the explanation for 2 points of stellar rotation in the night sky? Your question 3 was any evidence of a molten iron core. So housekeeping question number 3 to flat earthers is exactly what is the Earth made up of? How thick is it? Where does magma come from? And how can you have plate tectonics? Your question 4 was any scientific evidence for gravity. So question 4 for flat earthers is to explain why that lump hammer fell and broke your toes. What makes stuff go down? Basically, angry boy, we need an explanation for downity and an explanation that's good enough to make predictions. Your 5th question was gas pressure without a container. Obviously we do have pressure because we can measure it. Therefore you are saying there is a container. So question 5 for you is, where is this container? How about a photo of this dome? A sample of it? Any evidence of it whatsoever? Your question 6 was any evidence of Earth curvature. So question 6 for pancake worlders is, what evidence is there to explain things like ships, mountains, the sun disappearing behind the horizon? Your last Globe Earth gotcha question was the R value. Any evidence? So question 7 for Flatards is the D value. Any evidence? Since you're saying the Earth is a flat disc, there is a diameter to it. So what is it? You will have to find the edges though to enable you to calculate it. Now I have offered several times, Mr. Oakley, to debate you on this subject on a neutral channel with a fair moderator. Now that offer is still open. Of course, when I did last offer it to you, you put a condition on that you would debate me, but only if I sucked your balls while looking in your eyes. So any Oakley minions that happen to be watching this, please know it is Nathan Oakley who is too yellow to come out of his room with his mute button. So Nathan, I kindly decline that offer, but say to you...
How would you like to suck my balls?
What did you say?
I'm sorry. Actually, what I said was... How would you like to suck my balls? Mr. Oakley.
So Mr. Fundy Zealot Flatardian Oakley, with your presupposed flat earth, why don't you come back to us when you can answer those flat earth housekeeping questions? I hope you've all enjoyed it. Until next time, stay sensible.
Shut up and sit down.